And you proved up their side of the argument very well, I thought, in this book. So that indicates you do truly understand their viewpoint in my mind.
You read enough of their stuff. If you read enough of their works, it becomes very apparent how they think.
Right. And then one of your, I guess I would call this one of your saving graces here would be, William Engdahl.
Yeah.
And so, you were hoping he would save your bacon in the debate. And so that's kind of a counter argument to all these other books that are referenced in this novel.
I wanted to bring him up because I think he's a very good author. He's obviously dedicated to this, and he's an Ivy League educated man as well. And Quigley was Ivy League educated, but Engdahl is as well, but clearly has gone in the other direction, dedicating his life to what Howard would call a pursuit of wasteful endeavor, but for him clearly it isn't. He's trying to go out there and help people understand how the world actually operates at the highest levels and within the Ivy League halls.
To say that this was the first book I read of yours, and I cannot tell you how wonderful I thought this book was, and how impressed I was that you had taken the time. I don't recall how much time it took you, but let's say 6,000 hours or something that comes to mind of research. And so when I look at some of the books, like Trajan Ho, or even Viktor Frankl's book, which I read in high school, called Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you read that book or not, but it's a very powerful book. And basically, he was in Auschwitz in a prison camp, and he talks about what made him survive. He was one of the very few survivors, and so the reason I'm comparing your book to his is the fact that what a great deal it was. For the price of a paperback by Viktor Frankl, I could go and live his life experience and benefit from all of his life experience for the price of a paperback. And so,
I said, amen.
That's
one of the things. It's one of the things about books that I think people don't recognize is the value that you can take from a well-written book, something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. You get his entire life experience and something that can provide so much insight that is unavailable. How many people lived through Auschwitz and can share with you the ultimate considerations that, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to live a meaningful life, something like that. To come across something that's that powerful can be, for the price of a paperback, like you said, is I don't know how you can pass up on something like that.
Exactly. And so here we're looking at Tragedy and Hope, and of course, I'll have a few shots of this book, for the viewing folks here. But, it's 1,316 pages, some odd, the original Tragedy and Hope by Carroll Quigley. And, of course, as we've discussed, he's an academician. He's very finely tuned, very intelligent, very well read. He spent 20 years, as we talked about, looking into this topic. He also had 2 years of unlimited access to the CFR's archives, and was tangentially, could be considered somewhat of an insider, even though he wasn't on the inside ring, probably, of the control structure. But, this is an incredible opportunity for people to take a look at, who really runs the world, and not just who runs it, but how do they do it? How do they accomplish this?
That's the most important part. The most important.
So 203 pages, you can read that in a few nights, even if you have a busy job, where you're very busy with your family, but a few weekends you ought to be able to hammer that out. But I think this is a great bargain. You get to read 1,300 pages of academic work into a much more digestible, better organized, updated version of Tragedy and Hope. So
Well,
I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
I appreciate your thoughts on it. I'm always very, very grateful when people write me or people like yourself tell me that you found the information useful, because obviously that's the end goal, is to present the information in a way that anybody who's interested in it can take value from it. So if I accomplish that, then I can't ask for really anything in addition to that is just a bonus. So with regard to this book, obviously I want people to read it. So like I said before, all of my stuff is available online for free. Of course, I would prefer that you buy it because that's how I'd be compensated. But if it comes right down to it, what I want the most is for somebody to read it. So yeah, I mean, if I were going to add anything, that's it. I appreciate very much your thoughts on the book, and I've received other people have written me, and people are buying cases of it because they want to give it out to people. I mean, you can imagine how that feels. Feels good.
And like, your dishonest money, what amazes me, you're going to be writing a book on, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but on solutions. But I can see a very clear solution right now. And that is, if our people in the public school system, the teachers, the educators, and the students, if they knew what was contained in Trajan Ho and in dishonest money, this would be a much improved country and a much improved world in my mind.
They don't take control of the education system for no reason. They don't take control of the media for no reason. There's a reason why they control these information dissemination centers. Those are the opinion forming agencies. And there's a reason why they like to control those things. So ultimately, it would be fantastic. But it's very unlikely that people who profit from the current system are going to allow things into that system that would ultimately undermine and overturn that system. So as far as solutions are concerned, I do cover a few things briefly in Tragedy and Hope 101 that function within the current system. So for instance, jury nullification at the state level. I briefly touch on getting your money out, because I explain how, regardless of whether or not they own the money that's in the system that you're providing in their accounts, in their in the banks, in the trust funds, in the insurance companies, all this other stuff, regardless of whether or not they own it, they get to direct it. So that's an element of power that they enjoy. Clearly, the Federal Reserve System, the ability to create money out of thin air, is powerful beyond any ability to explain with words. So I touch on some of those things, but in the next book, what I really want to do is I want to talk about building a parallel system, because I believe, I don't know, I think it might have been Aristotle, somebody a long time ago figured out, and I believe it's true, that the best way to destroy the old is to build a better new. So if we can start establishing a parallel system that competes with the current system monetarily, a parallel system that in production, so things like 3D printing. We can already see a parallel system in information dissemination through the internet, which has been absolutely devastating to them. Devastating. Their information monopoly has been almost already.
Well, even Hillary Clinton said that they're losing the info world war.
Yes.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war. I'll be very blunt in my assessment.
So these, in my view, and in education, which, again, you take the internet, would be a perfect example of a way to bypass the current monopoly. I think that's where we need to move. I think that's ideally what's going to do it. That and awareness. So we need both. We need people to become progressively more aware, but ultimately the people who build these competing systems, if they're built properly, they will attract support organically, and that will, the benefits will just organically draw people, whether they're politically motivated or not. And I think ultimately that's what's going to help us.
Right, I agree. And I think education is, as they say, fundamental, because if people knew what was contained in these two books that we're talking about, or all three of them, the elite and the manipulators, the controllers, and the people that shouldn't be in power, they would have a very difficult time, and it would awaken the population. And I don't think they would be able to be fooled so easily by the corporate media, that really kind of echoes the government's position on just about everything and protects their own vested interest.
I agree.
And of course,
I agree.
They're owned by what, 6 major corporations on 95% of the media. So of course it makes sense, right?
I think that it's happening. So we're already witnessing that awakening. It's happening right now. So yeah, ideally they can, if people find this information useful, I ask, if you find it useful, you think it's compelling, you think it's presented in a way that is easy to understand and isn't too long and drawn out and all that, then just the best way to help is to share it with other people, because people appreciate that. I mean, I know I appreciate it when somebody recommends a book and I read it and I find it useful and it's fantastic. I might not have heard about that, that particular book or whatever. So to the extent that people read the information and find it useful, the best way to accelerate this ongoing awakening is to just tell other people, check this out. Hey, you can check it out online. It doesn't cost anything. It's really good. And if you want to check the sources, there's plenty of So for instance, Tragedy and Hope 101, I think, 300 different footnotes in a 200-page book. Let's say, for instance, that somebody wants to have Tragedy and Hope, but they don't necessarily want to read the whole thing. They can get their Tragedy and Hope, and they can get Tragedy and Hope 101, and they can check the footnotes just to make sure that I'm not taking anything out of context, to make sure it actually says exactly what I've said it says, because the statements speak for themselves. When somebody starts telling you, this Harvard-educated PhD who taught at Princeton and taught at the Foreign Services at Georgetown University is telling you how the political system operates and how the experts are going to completely bypass the experts, is what he calls them. There's other words, the technocrats, the elite, the New World Order, whatever you want to call them. These are people who are unelected and do what they want to do, the policymakers. So when he says...
And he was also a teacher for Bill Clinton, right?
Sure, he was...
Bill Clinton's professor.
Sure, a Rhodes Scholar.
As a teenager, I heard John Kennedy's summons to citizenship. And then, as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley.